laid out my scarf, and I've set my bias tape to match up the edge of the scarf on the part that would go towards the Scout's neck. And I've pinned it in place, headed towards one of the first corners. I'm actually going to stop my sewing, and I'm just going to sew a straight stitch down this way, and I'm going to stop the straight stitch approximately 1/2 inch from the corner of the scarf. So I'm going to put this in as a mark where I'd stop. Put it in my machine, and I line up the edge of the scarf with the edge of my presser foot, and I'm just going to do a straight stitch down the end of the scarf. Stopping, like I said, that last 1/2 inch. On this one, I don't really worry about ending the seam with a forward and backward motion. It's going to be covered over and sewn again. To turn the corner of the scarf, I'm going to bring the bias tape down to the end of the corner, and I'm going to turn it, coming back, and I'm going to start approximately 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch in, and I am going to pin this one little spot just to get the starting. But I'm going to confess, I'm a lazy pinner, so I'm just going to line it up like this and let my presser foot hold the bias tape in place. When I come to the end, I'm going to use the same technique where I stop my seam approximately 1/2 inch before I reach the corner. And once again, go around the corner and start again. Approaching the very end of the scarf where I started, and I am going to double cross my 2 ends of the bias tape. I just make sure that the fold of the first bias tape matches the fold of the second, or matches the fold of where I started, and I am going to back that one up. So I've completed my first trip around the scarf. What comes next is folding over the bias tape and making the corners work. Alright, now we need to fold over the bias tape to the other side and sew it down to complete the scarf. But I'm going to debulk this area here just so it'll line up a little bit better. So I've cut off the material of the underneath bias tape, and I'm going to fold them over and do a double fold so that it looks like this, so it is the same on both sides. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin, because I really don't want this to slip, and it's a lot of material, so it takes a second. Bring the first fold over, and then do the second one so that I pinch the lower end of the scarf, or the portion that's next to the Scout, and then I take, almost like a bed sheet, and take the parts of the scarf that are down the back and bring them so that they line up with the fold in the front, like this. And this I will pin to make sure it stays in space. So if you look at it from the front of the scarf, it looks like this, and from the back, it looks the same. When I sew this, I'm going to sew down the long end, and then I'm going to start my next seam right here on the shorter part. So now I'm going to make the corner of the point of the scarf that goes down the boy's back. So I find it is a little bit easier if I pin the two sides of the material leading up to it, so at least you don't have to worry about that. I'm going to do this like I would do a bed sheet, where I take the straight part and I push it up into the corner, and then I bring the other side over. So I've made a point in my bias tape, and then I tape it down. Then I pin it down. And the fold is directly in the corner. Alright, so I finished pinning my last corner. I'm going to come down, folding it over. I want to make sure that all my first seams are covered when I'm going to start to sew. Where the bias tape started and ended, and I'm actually going to just slip another quick pin in there to make sure we get off to a great start. And then I'm going to put the presser foot, or the center of the presser foot where the needle is, and I'm going to put it where the edge, the folded edge of the bias tape here, is on this side of my presser foot. So this is going to be my line for the presser foot, and I'll sew, I don't know, what's that, about 1/8 of an inch in, and so it will cover both this side and it will cover this side, so it will be completely encased. The edge will be completely encased in the bias tape. I mentioned earlier, I'm going to move this forward so you can see a little bit better, that when it comes to the fold over, I go up to the fold, but I don't go into the next fold. That probably didn't make much sense. Let's say, maybe words will speak louder, or pictures will speak louder than words. So I've come up to the point that the bias tape is folded over, and I'm going to start my next seam on top. Up to the point of the scarf that goes down the scout's back, and here I don't really stop and start again. I come up to the corner. I tend to pull my pins, and when I hit the fold, I'm going to raise the presser foot, turn my scarf, and then continue on. And in this case, I'm just going to go to the end since the fold is on top. And I'm going to do a few backward stitches to hold it into place. I'm going to cut it. I'm back to my starting spot. I'm going to go over into where I started off the seam. I'm going to back up a few stitches, and now it's just finished work. So once I trim all my seams, I'll have a finished scarf. So after a quick pressing, I'm ready to put this on a Boy Scout.